Good morning. It is Sunday, the 7th of September, 2025. It is coming up to 11 a.m. UK time. It is 8 p.m. Sydney time, because that's where my guest is based. This is someone who I've relatively recently connected with, has found his way into the 45s addiction, has been a guest on Coffee and Donuts, and going to be doing some other shows as well. But he reached out, having seen the shows before, and said, I'd like to talk about some of the issues that I've been through in relation to my mental health. I think it'd be helpful for the community. So we got a date, and here we are. So without further ado, here he is, the real deal.
Hey, thanks for having me on board, man.
Yeah, cheers for being on board, man. Like I said at the beginning, it's only been relatively recently that we've sort of connected, but you've been on Coffee and Donuts and done a great set and getting a little bit more into the 45s, but we'll come back to that sort of further down the line. But with all my guests, I always like to find out who was their first influence in terms of music. So sometimes it's brothers and sisters, sometimes it's friends, sometimes it's cousins, sometimes it's parents. For you, who was it who first got you into music?
100% my mum. So my parents split up in 1975, and I was in New Zealand at the time. And my mum just picked me up and took me to Australia for a couple of years in 1975. We had friends and family here. And I guess she just wanted like a change of scenery. We didn't really have much when we got here. We just lived in a one-bedroom apartment. I was sleeping in the lounge. The only two things that we had for entertainment in that apartment was a small Sanyo black and white TV. It was about 10 inches, and a portable turntable. So apart from that, all I had was my imagination, really. Mum, when I got to about the age of 7, she started letting me operate the turntable, and we had this. It was one of those ones where you could stack the 45s, and it would drop them one by one. The needle would go back, come back on, and play. It had like fake veneer around it. I'm pretty sure it had like a built-in speaker, because I can't remember it being plugged into anything. And she used to let me stack it up and operate it while she was like doing the dishes or just, mum stuff. Solo mum's always pretty busy. And I was just fascinated by the whole operation and how the sound came from a physical object that was spinning. I never lost the fascination for it. It just stayed with me.
That's amazing that even from such a young age, 45s were obviously a part of your culture, because obviously back in 75, CDs didn't exist.
Yeah.
I guess, people were buying singles because they were relatively cheap. And I think the thing you're talking about is like, because I used to have one, and I've talked about it quite a lot. This used to be where I used to live when I was a young age. And I remember sitting on the floor, my first memories with a record player, not much different to what you were describing. And it's like a sort of L-shaped plastic thing that went on top, didn't it? And you'd stack up the things, and then gradually one would sort of fall down.
The good thing about 45s is they're quite easy to hold when you've got child's hands. They're like a scaled down version of a record, so they're a lot easy to manage and handle. So that was never like a problem. And mum had a few albums as well. She loved ABBA and Saturday Night Fever, and so I got a little bit of a taste of like commercial disco just through listening to some of her collection. The first record that came into my own hands, mum bought for me, was the soundtrack to Star Wars, and it was like a double album, and it came with a booklet, really awesome booklet of just great pictures. And I was off from that point. I was like, oh wow, this is just amazing. I've got my own record. I was so happy. And actually, on my 7th birthday, if you go to my Twitch homepage, there's a picture of me, 7 years old, and mum made a cake, a record cake. Pretty simple idea, but it's really great. And there's a picture of me with the record cake on my lap.
A couple of things that come out of that. One is obviously you're saying that obviously as a kid, the 7-inch format is great. And I think that's why our 45 Kids, when we do the 45 Kids show, got into it, because it's just a nice size format of music. The second thing is obviously, like you say, that it's the connection between this bit of vinyl, this bit of plastic, effectively being able to generate the music. And then the third thing you're saying, which is interesting, is obviously with collecting vinyl, obviously not so much with 45s because a lot of them are just generic sleeves, but certainly with albums, it's all about the artwork as well and the liner notes and what comes with it, and physically being able to hold something while you're listening to the music, which you don't have with MP3. You might have a picture on Spotify or whatever, but you just don't have that, do you? You don't have that tactile album that you're holding and able to read who did the drums, who did the production, and, you know, like you say, reading all the stories about Star Wars. But yeah, I mean, Star Wars is a great place to start. You know?
It is. I was 7 when it came out in 77, and it changed our lives as kids. With that in the playground the next day, we all talked about Star Wars for forever.
It's amazing. So we've got up to about the age of 7. You've got this Star Wars record. That's the first one you get. How does that progress? Do you then eventually start buying your own records?
Yeah, so I'll fast forward to about the age of 13. At that age, I was buying cassette tapes, probably more cassette tapes than records. I had just been given my first, ghetto blaster, had a really nice Sanyo ghetto blaster. And I was making friends with a few guys at school that were into actually making some music. So they were into punk. So I kind of went from mum's disco to punk rock. And basically my friend said, like, let's start something. And I said, yeah, I'll be the drummer. And I went and bought some drumsticks and I was bashing away on a cardboard box. A friend of mine had a really beat up like electric guitar, and my other mate bought a bass guitar. And we started practicing together in a garage, like a proper garage band, teenage garage band, just annoying all the neighbors with a racket. And I can remember my first taste of a performance was there was a school musical, and basically it was just the three of us. We had the most rudimentary like setup. I just had a snare drum with a school uniform like stretched over the top so it wouldn't be too loud when I hit it, and my friend had a bass guitar and the other guy had a electric guitar. I just remember the looks on the teachers' faces when we sang our songs. The look of disdain they gave us. But when we finished, like all the kids in that hall were like screaming and clapping and like woohoo. It was like, you know, one of us had sort of like what they were into, we kind of like did. It wasn't like something structured by what the teachers were telling us to perform, some like boring song or whatever. We just like did a few originals, and that was like my first taste of performing. And I was just like, wow, I can actually make people like react really positively with music. So that was like my first impression of like performing. It's like, oh yeah, I kind of like this, like playing something I enjoy, playing music and having people enjoy it in front of me. That's really cool.
That's what we do, isn't it? You know, especially as DJs, you know, it's like playing our music that we enjoy, and hopefully the crowd get into it as well. So it's good that you've picked that up from 13. Is that when you're doing this?
13, yeah. And so we stuck with it, and one of the band members went and did his own thing, and then we formed another band, which was, it was like half covers, half kind of like indie. Really were like an indie band. We liked a lot of obscure U2 covers and stuff like that. And we got a manager. I ended up getting drum tuition by a pretty well-known jazz drummer in New Zealand, and then started buying my first drum kits. I went for about 5 in the end. So we ended up doing like performing at universities and pubs and sort of other events. We never got super big or anything. It was just something that we managed to make last for about, I don't know, 5, 6 years, something like that. The only thing though is I kind of noticed that, you know, when you're playing in the band, you've got your set list, and if the crowd's not feeling it, you're kind of stuck with that set. I kind of like the idea of a DJ where you could have your options of actually play music that people could respond to. So
what was that band called? What was your first band called?
The Exit.
The Exits. Okay.
Yeah.
That's a cool name.
Yeah, we had like stovepipe pants and used to gel our hair up, you know, kind of new romantic sort of style, and just a couple of the guys had winkle pickers. It was quite funny. But through that sort of phase, I sort of started moving on from like punk to other areas. Like I was listening to like a lot of Pink Floyd, Talk. I was massively into Talk. I still am actually. So like, you know, the Balearic sound, a lot of David Bowie, a lot of that music of the time. My sort of appreciation for music was just like growing. I never felt like I had to like limit myself to a sound, so to speak. It's like I look at it like food. It's like, you know, why would you just want to eat fish and chips every night when you can try that from somewhere or that from somewhere? So it was through the years just growing bigger and bigger and bigger as far as like my appreciation for music like went. I didn't like ever pigeonhole myself.
And I guess that's also an age thing as well, isn't it? You know, as you mature and get older, you get into different styles of music. Even now, you know, you're constantly listening to new music. During this period of time when you're in the exit the band, are you buying records, and is that why when you sort of get to the end of that, you're sort of able to start looking at sort of the DJ side of it?
So the record buying, I didn't really start in earnest until I started DJing, and it's kind of an amusing beginning because it's probably not like most people how I started DJing. I was a bit of a late starter to nightclubs. I didn't start till like 1988. I just wasn't really like confident with dancing for one. Like I love going to places where there were music, but with the clubs, close friend always wanted to dance. And I'll give you a demonstration of what I could do up to that point. And this is why I was so apprehensive to go to a nightclub. This is how my dance style was.
That's not really dancing, but yeah.
It's not dancing at all.
Yeah.
So it's like, you know, dancing with your feet nailed to the floor. So basically, my friends who was in the hip hop, he said, "Look, I'll show you how to dance." And we played Run DMC, Raising Hell. He had a big house and he had like a separate lounge and with a good sound system, and we had it to ourselves. So he would just play that loud and he'd show me some like dance moves, and just to be able to like start feeling the rhythm. And we also had a Roland 808 there that we used to like plug in and tap over the beat of the album. Indirectly, he was responsible for me discovering hip hop, and the energy of hip hop I found quite similar. There was a parallel to like punk that I sort of like understood, and that eased it up for me to start going clubbing, because up until that time, you know, New Zealand was known for like band guitar orientated music predominantly, a lot of indie stuff as well. You know, it wasn't, you'd have to go to a club and sort of hear that music, to a specific club if you wanted to hear it. You didn't necessarily hear it on the radio. I remember going to the club for the first night, this place called Alfie's, which was used to be like a gay nightclub, but by the time I got there, it was like mostly students with like gays and friends, and they had a show in between having the dance floor full. They had like a little cabaret show. And I remember the first night I went down there and it was absolutely heaving, and it was like a bunker. They could turn the music up without disturbing, you know, any residents or anything. And it had a really good sound system actually. And there was like a pink cage right in front of the dance floor. I'm glad it was a cage actually. Yeah, it saved me a few times when I ended up working there. But I was just like, wow, this is amazing. And this is basically me just discovering like club life. This is right when Daisy Age hit. So there's like lots of De La Soul and Tribe Called Quest. And I was just like, oh man, I'm loving this. I'm so loving this. And I remember going up to the DJ in the cage and saying, like, if you've got any spots coming up for a DJ, like, let me know. He was like, yeah, sure. And I had no experience DJing at all, like nothing. But this club supplied the records.
That wow, okay. So it's there.
They were getting in, like, I don't know if you remember that label, like Ultimix. They used to get lots of Ultimix stuff, and they sometimes get DMC stuff in, and like Hot Tracks, Wicked Tracks, all those early like mashup things, and then, you know, all the other stuff. And the head DJ that was there used to like play a lot of up tempo, ravey sort of sounds. But a lot of the students that were coming down were wanting to hear stuff that like I was into, because I was the same age as them. didn't want to hear that. They were more into like hip hop and everything else than what was being played by the other DJ. So everyone would wait for him to leave, and then they would enjoy the rest of the night with different music. So basically, after a while, they got back to me and said, "Look, we've got a position for the lighting," and I went, "Oh, great, sure." So I started off there on the light system. There was like a bunch of lights over the dance floor that, you know, flowers and everything, all those rotating ones that go 360 and shoot the, you know, those old school disco lights and everything. So I was basically in charge of operating all of those and timing them to the music. Like, you know, we had a strobe that it was like you could twist the knob and time it to the BPM and all sorts of stuff. It was really fun, but at the same time, I got to watch what the DJ was doing and how he could like control the crowd. And I thought, wow, this is really great, man. I can't wait to do this. And then eventually, one of the other DJs left to go to the army, and they said, "We'll give you Saturday night." And I went, "Awesome." Again, I'd had no experience. I'd had no practice whatsoever. So Saturday night comes around, and again, it's like packed. Like they're not letting any other people in the club. It's that like full. You know, the walls dripping with sweat. You know, that sort of bunker style. I remember I was so nervous that the little arm on the head shell. I couldn't keep it in my finger because my hands were like shaking. I knew it was going to be a train wreck. I just did, and so I vividly remember dropping my first track and having both of these songs just train wreck, and everyone stop and turn around and look at me like, "What are you doing?" And yeah, so that wasn't a great start, but I was really, really fortunate because working with me in the same nightclub was a guy called Bevan Keys. Now, there were going to be 3 people I'm going to mention when I progressed with the story. And if it wasn't for them, I don't think I'd be telling this story. And these 3 people are Bevan Keys, Kyan O'Donnell, Emmanuel Bundy. Now, these guys have been DJing forever, and they've kind of got like the status of, say, like Norman J. They're like a national treasure for us in New Zealand as far as like DJing and music goes. Anyway, Bevan Keys was working there. He pulled me aside and said, "Look, man, I'll show you how to do it. Just meet me in the weekend." Basically, I met up with Bevan, and he said, "This is all you got to do. You just got to drop it on the downbeat or the upbeat." And because I'd been a drummer, that made like total sense. It's like, oh, drop it on the kick or drop it on the snare. I was like, yeah, okay, I get it now. Just cue it up. And so the first thing I sort of learned was just to cut in time. You didn't have to like blend, just cut it in time. That was just like the fastest sort of mix you could do before you learn how to beat mix. But by about a month, I'd got it like nailed. It was not a problem for me. I could like mix any kind of like syncopated beat, whether it was like house or hip hop or anything like in between. So that was great. And then because they had the record collection, I was using the record collection, so I had that to fall back on. Things started progressing pretty good from there. I had my crowd of like students that would come in and wait for Owen to finish, and then I'd jump on and I'd be playing all the stuff that like they wanted to hear. So I played there for about 2 years. That club was probably about the most commercial I ever got in my DJ sets, because I've never really been interested in playing the sort of, I don't know, the commercial side of things. I leave it to the other guys. It's not my bag. I'm not down on it, but it's just not my thing.
Now, at this stage, obviously, you're using their decks, using their records. Have you got your own setup at home, and are you practicing, or is it literally the practice is the DJ gig there?
I'm actually learning on the job.
Right. When do you get your own set then? When do they sort of come in?
They came in sort of like further down the line, actually. So I started collecting records before I bought my first decks. I started collecting records around the same time. Yeah, around about 1990s was when it really started kicking off. The first sort of record I bought, which weren't anything commercial, were the Fat Jazzy Groove series, like DJ Smash and all the New Breed stuff I really got into. So I was really starting to dig that like jazzy hip hop sound, obviously like influence from like Tribe Called Quest and Native Tongues. That was something I was really feeling at the time. So that started to become sort of like the basis. And then about 3 years later, I progressed to another club, which is quite legendary in New Zealand as being really ahead of its time. So we had these two nightclubs that were connected together. One was called The Box and the other one was called Cor Celebre. So if you can imagine Blue Note and the Jazz Caf connected, like
Right, cool.
places that have that music policy, the people that own it are music lovers. You know, they've got great doormen who understand letting, you know, people in that want to hear the music and keeping everyone else out. Just like, you know, a lot of it starts with having good doormen actually who can get the right people in to like get your thing, because you know, there weren't that many underground clubs in New Zealand at the time, but you'd be surprised that there was a community that was running in parallel with what was happening in the States and what was happening in the UK. By Mix Mag and DMC, like Box actually had a huge DMC like picture out on the front wall. And again, these two places were like bunkers underground. The Box had a booming system, and so that was like house and techno and upbeat. Cor Celebre was like live jazz, hip hop, spoken word, funk, soul, rare groove, all of that. You know, there was not really anywhere else like it in Auckland at the time. You know, there was like a square mile where all the clubs were sort of like close together. So it was like a real community of people. It actually felt like more of a family than anything when you live in a city with like a smaller population. But our like scene that we had was really strong, and so international DJs would always play at this venue because the people that ran it had like the connections, and so I got to rub shoulders and meet quite a few like internationals there, which was great because normally I'd never even get close to them, but you know, I could just hang out with Jeff Mills and like watch him do a set, you know, 2 feet away, just sitting behind him in the DJ box with my friends, just going, wow, this is incredible. And so, like, you know, I met quite a few people there, had a lot of really good connections. Nathan Haynes came out of that place. Smart Clive Lowe came out of that place. Zane Lowe came out of that place. You know, it was really special thing that we had there. So I was playing in Cor Celeb. I had sometimes we're playing the Box, but Cor Celeb is where I met one of the other DJs that I mentioned was Manuel Bundy. Manuel, in my mind, is someone I've always like looked up to in every respect. And if I could give you an idea of who he sort of is like, a bit like Freddie J, like really deep knowledge of music, incredible skills on the turntables, and just an awesome guy. And so working alongside him, it rubbed off on me. Watching his level of skill definitely rubbed off me and influenced me to become better, study the craft more. Also, you know, I'm learning a lot more music this time. Now I'm in this place, which is not commercial at all like the other place I came from. I'm suddenly learning more music and finding out, yeah, this is like my sound. I'm really connecting with the sound. I'm finding my style as a DJ.
And I guess this is also before like the internet, before anything like that. So you don't have easy access like we do now, where you can turn on Twitch and watch these amazing DJs and see what they're doing. Or like you say, you were talking about VHS tapes from DMC. You know, you're having to go out and source this stuff, and also being able to watch it in real time and see that's where you're learning, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly. You know, we had such a tight community that because at that stage, that's all I was doing was just like, you know, I was a career DJ. I, you know, wake up sort of 11 o'clock, meet up with my other DJ friends, go to a cafe, then go record hunting together, and you know, just go back to someone's house and play music and sit around all together and share the music that you played and just
living the dream.
It was a life of leisure. Like, honestly, I was just so happy to be doing that. Anyway, I better fast forward to a couple of years later. I got headhunted to play for a new club that was opening up called the Kuja Lounge. And now this is taking what Cool Celeb and the Box had, and sort of giving it more of a worldly kind of feel, because there was another DJ running the show there who's the third DJ I mentioned, called Kyan O'Donnell. And Kyan is crate digger extraordinaire. He's got the largest record collection I've ever seen in my lifetime. I know there are bigger ones, but his is sizable, and his depth of knowledge of music is absolutely astounding. So when I got asked to play there and be resident there, my musical knowledge just got kicked into the stratosphere after watching Kyan play and just go, whoa, what's that? What is that? Where does that come from? Never heard this before. Everyone that worked up in the Cougar Lounge at that time, it was like a family. Like, we all hung out together like during the day, and we'd stay back after the club finished at night time and stay there until the sun came up and play music to, like, we'd have a lock-in in the club, and just, we would still play, but we would just like play to the staff and just muck around and have fun. And it was such a good scene, and that place went off. I'll just say this now, like, I've never wanted to be the DJ that was in the limelight. I'm not that kind of person. I like to play music that people enjoy, see them enjoying it, and then like just sort of fall back into the shadows when I'm finished. That's what I'm sort of comfortable with. I'm not really comfortable with massively being in the limelight. And I remember one night that place was ram jammed, and I played Soul Salsa Soul by Saint Germain, which was a huge hit at the time. The place just went mental. And I remember that song finishing, and everyone in that room turning and facing to me and cheering and clapping. And I almost couldn't take it. I was just like, I choked up, and I had to look away, like, oh, like, ugh. Like, it was almost like too much attention. Like, I hadn't sort of like experienced that before. It can be quite emotional sometimes when you're DJing and you connect with a lot of people, and they just give all that love back to you there and then. It's not like you're in an office all day and one person says, hey, good job, and then that's it. It's like everyone at that point, they all throw it back at you. And that was like, yeah, that was amazing.
It's like an instant sort of reaction, and we'll come back to Twitch later, but it's a little bit like that on Twitch, isn't it? You're sort of playing for people who are into what you're doing, and obviously they're giving you the love back, with the emotes or with the comments and all the rest of it. Okay, so you're at that club. I think I might have missed the name. What was the name of this bigger sort of club that you're resident at?
It was called the Cougar Lounge.
The Cougar Lounge. Okay, cool.
Yeah.
How does that then sort of progress from there? You're a resident there for a number of years?
I've got a British passport and a Kiwi passport. My parents are both from the UK. My grandparents are the 10-pound poms that came out this part of the world. So I always felt that I had that golden ticket to use, and it was a bit of a waste not using it. And at the same time, I started feeling a little bit complacent with DJing in the way that, I don't want to sound egotistical or anything. This is not where it's coming from, but it felt like it was a little bit too easy playing on my home turf, if you know what I mean. It's like if you're a football team and you're always playing on the home ground, you've got a little bit of an advantage over the other team, right? Or your supporters are there. But I felt like I need to cut my teeth overseas. I want to play to people on the other side of the world, and I want to see if they connect with what I have, with what I've learnt. I want to see if they get it. Now, that's around the same time I did have my first pair of turntables, probably around about 96. I bought them. I had them for about a year, and they paid for my plane ticket, unfortunately, as well as not a sizable chunk, but a chunk of my record collection. It was just throwing caution to the wind and just putting everything on black and just like, right, I'm going to do this. Like, I had it so comfortable at that point. I didn't need to leave. I had gigs all over the place because these were my residencies, but I also had other places that I was gigging about. So I had like plenty of work and a really good lifestyle. And I was like, cushy, but I just felt like, no, I've got to do this. So 1998, I traveled to the UK. Now, I kind of did something a little bit stupid before I did that. I went to Canada for 3 months snowboarding. And that's probably not like the smartest thing to do if you're going to try and like start a life in London, is spend majority of your money snowboarding and then land there with not much. I thought, well, look, I'll just get some kind of like contract work, and I'm sure I can get work. I was really lucky. I had a close friend that lived in London, and he put me up, and he really helped me out in a big way. Thanks, Greg. And so I ended up getting contract work, admin kind of stuff. I worked at some pretty crazy places like the Natural History Museum and the London Crime Squad and stuff like that. That's a whole nother story. Getting back to DJing, I started hanging out in Camden. I really liked Camden, and there was a feel about it that I liked. I went down to this bar called Bar Vinyl in Inverness Street, and it was a really cool bar which had a record store underneath and a record company above, Finger Lickin Records.
Finger licking, yeah.
Yeah. And so I went there on a Saturday, and they had open decks, and I just said, look, I've got records. Do you mind giving me a tryout? And they went, yeah, sure. I was playing there, and it was, during summer, the markets are, in full swing, and London in summer for me is just a really great place to be. And there were DJs walking in and out, and some of them would stop and talk to me because they'd like hear what I was playing. They'd be like, oh yeah, I like that. And they'd be like, well, where are you from? And I'm like, oh, New Zealand. And they're like, wow, really? Because New Zealand DJs at that time in the UK weren't really many, or if any. There was a guy that had Saturday nights there who was also a DJ at Ministry of Sound of all places, and he said, hey, do you want to be my wingman on a Saturday night here in Bar Vinyl? I said, yeah, sure. That was my foot in the door, and I loved playing there, and that was great. And then he said, do you want to do this at Ministry of Sound? And I said, yeah, why not? Disclaimer, I'm not really big into Ministry of Sound. I can sort of appreciate it. Super clubs are cool and that. When the right DJ is playing like Louis Vega or Kenny Dope or something, I'm like, yeah, I'm up for it. But I wasn't really about the super clubs in the way. But it was an interesting chance to take a look behind the curtain, because I got sort of like access to other areas that you normally don't like see as a punter. That was kind of fun. I can tell you that the the toilets upstairs in the sort of area that you could get access to, you could fit about 8 people in each cubicle. And so
That says a lot.
use your imagination.
And you're playing hip hop still at this time?
The room that we played in, coincidentally, was called The Box, like the one back in New Zealand. It was basically everything else but house. So that was fine with me, because I was playing everything but house. We're playing there, and I just felt kind of like I was on top of the world. It's like, wow, it took me 5 months from like landing there to sort of get to that point. And I was like, this is kind of like looking good. Finger Licking started like booking me for a few gigs as well, and I had my residency at Bar Vinyl too. That was all great. Then it got not so great. This is where the mental health comes in. I was in London for about 1 year, and the first half of that year was you're on a roller coaster, and it's going up to the top of the very top before it goes down, and you're like, woohoo! And then it goes over and goes down, and you're like, oh no, uh-oh. That's what the second part of the year was. So what basically happened was I entered into a really mentally abusive relationship with someone. She was living in a different city. She was in Manchester, and I was in London. It was kind of like a long distance relationship thing. She'd come and see me every month, and we'd just party and have a great time. But I mean, it's not really like real life when you only ever get to do that with a person. You don't really know what's happening in the background. And unfortunately, there was addiction happening in the background that I had no idea of. It was kept hidden from me. Now, what made it worse was I wasn't getting so much consistent work, office work, and there was like gaps of 2 weeks here, 3 weeks there, where I wasn't working in between contracts. And after a while, that added up, and I ended up having to sell all my snowboard gear and having to move out of my flat because I was getting behind in the rent. The person I was seeing, this sort of relationship got pretty heavy pretty quickly. to a point where, you know, she was saying, I want to come back to New Zealand with you. So I was just like, wow, this is like, you know, I've done it. Like I've cracked the DJ thing. I've met someone amazing, and they want to come back to my own country. And I was just on the highest of highs at that point. But when I had to move out of my flat and I was owing money, she said, why don't you come up and stay with me in Manchester? Yeah, sure. And that lasted 1 week, and our whole relationship fell apart in that week in a really toxic way. It just destroyed me. Basically, it went from come and stay with me to F off back to where you came from. And so I remember catching a train back to London, and at this point I had nowhere to live, really no money, just a few friends that could let me, like, you know, sleep on their couch. I still had my records. I made sure I didn't sell any of those, but that was all I had, basically, a few clothes and some records and a couch to like sleep on. I remember one night waking up underneath someone's kitchen table. That was the only place I could sleep. I remember that. That was real strange, and I didn't even really know these people as well. You know, human traffic at the end where Danny Dyer is like walking down the street and it's really overcast and it's like the Monday after their big weekend out. He just looks like lost, just like hopelessly lost. That's what I was like every day. It was taking a real toll on me. I wasn't eating properly. I was getting ghosted. You know, I wasn't getting any answers to why I'd been put in this position. I was just thinking, is it all my fault? What helped me get through this, believe it or not, is music. Because for me, music has always been like a friend that has been there. Like when I was a kid listening to music on a turntable, I'm an only child, so I didn't have any brothers or sisters. Like the music was like something that kept me company. So it always felt like it's a friend that is there for me. I feel like you can always find a piece of music that is going to match your mood. So if you're feeling down, you can find music that matches that. And then over time, you slowly bring yourself out of it by lifting the music up. I saw something on the internet recently about, they say that listening to music does stimulate part of the brain that is similar to being in a social situation. If you can imagine mental health like a spirit level, and you know, you're either going down one side or the other like that, and the bubble is moving. I had 3 records that I would listen to like a mantra that would keep that level straight so I could keep myself at a certain place. One was Midnight Marauders, one was Smoker's Delight, Nightmares of Wax, and the other one was Royers, Ubiquity, Everyone Loves the Sunshine. So I just used to listen to those over and over and over and over again. And they just helped me keep my feet on the ground. I knew I was beat at that point. So what I did is I cut my losses and decided to fly back to New Zealand to just be around people that I knew and loved, and that could just help me heal. That was the most important thing, because I was so far away from all of that. And that's what I needed the most. So I just thought, well, you know, I'll come back. This is just the end of this chapter. There's going to be another one. And so that's what I did.
What year did you go back to New Zealand?
I came back in 99. All of my DJ networks were intact. So I just basically jumped straight back into that scene again. Started on radio, actually. There was a grassroots radio station at that time. It's still around. It's bigger now, corporate, but grassroots back then. So they gave me a show on a Sunday. So I had a show called Jazzadelica I used to do. Started playing festivals, had multiple residencies. Again, Kuja Lounge was still going, so I started playing there. And then another nightclub opened up, which was called Galatos, which was similar to Kuja, similar to the other ones that I played at, and had a much larger space for like live events. In fact, believe it or not, Coldplay played down there before they were even really known about.
Wow.
I was back in my comfortable scene again with my friends and family, and everything was going well. And then 2003 came around, and I was like, right, I want to give this another shot. So I did the same thing, sold my turntables, my second set, sold more records than I really wanted to. But hey, it's like I can get those things again. This time, I was a little bit more organized. A promoter in New Zealand, I think he's still living in the UK, I'm not sure, called Jasper, and he was putting on an event called Specific. It was promoting New Zealand artists like Fat Freddy's and DJs and Solar Rosa and all sorts of Kiwi musicians that were expats over in the UK. And I said, look, I'm coming over. Can I be part of this event? And he said, yeah, sure. That event was held in Fabric. I got 2 gigs in there. I warmed up for Fat Freddy's, and I also was controlling the music for King Kapisi in a different room. I distinctly remember doing the sound check in the main room. The sound engineer said, oh, give me a record. So I just picked out my fattest soul jazz double, really fat recording. Like, he put it on the system, and the speakers would like move in air. You could just feel the air move when it was like boom, 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 boom. And I just remember turning around to my friend and laughing and going, oh my God, I'm getting paid to do this. Like, this is like crazy. I just appreciated like how well that place was like set up, the sound system and everything. It was just like, wow, this is like a DJ's dream, getting to play my favorite music through like a sound system that's this booming. So on top of that, I decided I was going to get a full-time day job. I ended up being a London bike courier for 8 years.
Right, okay.
Which was a whole nother story. I could speak hours about it. I'm not going to, but I've always been a cyclist, so that suited me fine. It was like, get to explore London on a bike, get paid for it, and in the weekend and during the week have DJ gigs. So I made certain that I was never going to be put in that position where I was going to be without money. I ended up getting a really great residency with another expat, Vishal, a place in Lockside Lock called Lockside Lounge, run by a very, very close friend of mine, Dave Johnson. We just met through a mutual friend. We put on a night, Saturday nights up there called Spot On in the Camden Lock. And those were great. Brad and Dom would play with us sometimes on the Next Men. They would come down. It was great meeting those guys and just seeing them jam it. And then I got a number of other residencies and one-off gigs around. There's actually a list on my Twitch homepage, but it's only of places I can remember. I'm sorry, it is probably a whole bunch more that I've just forgotten the name of because of age and so how far back it was. But yeah, so I started playing around again. Got to about 2008. I met the mother of my son. We had a child on the way, so we decided to move to Holland. And I lived in Holland for 3.5 years. That was during the credit crunch, so that was actually really quite difficult timing-wise. And then moved everything back to New Zealand. So this is like, by now, it's like 1, 2, 3, 4. It's like my 4th international move. So everything I had, my 3rd set of turntables, more records that I collected, and extra stuff on a container ship back to New Zealand. I decided, look, I'm going to try and make the best of a not great situation. I'm not going to involve him in any like fighting or anything. I'm just going to concentrate on like keeping a good connection with my son. So I started flying over every year and spending his summer holidays with him and just reconnecting with him and just being a dad again, really. And his family and his mum ended up being really accommodating to me, and actually me and her get on better now as friends than we did as a relationship. That actually worked out really good. It's not ideal that I'm on the other side of the world, but our connection is really strong, and I've seen him quite a few times until COVID hit, unfortunately. And that was another mental health thing, because I couldn't see the last 3 years of his childhood, not allowed to go over. I wasn't allowed to leave this country. When that happened, I was seeing things on TV that would be like kids crying that they couldn't see their grandma who lived in the next state. And I was getting really bitter. It's like, I can't see my son on the other side of the world. How do you think that makes me feel? At that point, I shut down all social media. I was just like, right, I'm just going to concentrate on myself, because it was kind of crazy at the time. There was all these conspiracy theories and people arguing and all sorts of stuff going on the internet, and I just decided to shut all the noise out and just go AWOL from social media for like, a couple of years and then come back to it. So when Twitch blew up for DJs during that time, I completely missed the bandwagon. I just wasn't part of that. I really wish I knew about it, because it would have been great, but oh well, c'est la vie.
I guess you just weren't part of it, and there's a lot of people who obviously didn't jump on it for many reasons. One, they didn't know about it. Two, they didn't know how to set it up. Three, they didn't realize it sort of existed in that way. So you weren't aware of it at all. It wasn't a case of you were watching it and just not streaming. It was just completely off your radar at that point.
Yeah, I sort of came onto Twitch actually as a gamer. I used to play competitive gaming. I was a moderator for a video game company as well on the side. I knew it through gaming, but I didn't really discover the DJ thing until about just over a year ago. Like, I'm a real late starter. Can't actually remember the day where I discovered like there were DJs, but I do remember my first port of call, and it was Lee Lazy Soul, and I was like, "Oh, this is great! Like, there's someone that has got knowledge of music, of stuff that I like. He's scratching. He's a nice guy. The community is really nice. There are nice people here." At that time, I'd actually moved back here to Australia because I met my current partner now. We've been together for over 10 years, and I moved here in 2017. And when I got here at that point, I was a little bit disillusioned with the DJ scene. I think I'd just seen one too many T-posers behind the decks, or too many celebrities pretending to DJ, or I don't know. I just thought, maybe it's time for me to hang my headphones up, do I really want to be the grey-haired old guy, like trying to hustle for work in a town where nobody knows them? I don't know if I want to really be doing that. I might just leave it to the younger generation and just like leave it there. I've had a really good run. So I just I had my deck set up here and I play music every now and again, but I just not fell by the wayside, but I just didn't give it much attention. And so when I discovered Lee Lazy, from there I discovered Freddie. And when I saw Freddie play, I was just like, wow, this is amazing. And that's when 45s clicked for me in a massive way. I was like, what is he doing? Like, how is he doing it with those small records? I don't know if you've ever noticed, but Freddie J has a different way of scratching. He scratches with his hand at 6 o'clock. I've never seen any DJ ever do it like that. Next time you watch him scratch, he watches his fingers, and I'm just like, what? How does he do that? I thought maybe he's just developed that for 45s. I was just like, man, this is incredible. And I just started binge watching Freddie, and just like the community was just incredible, because I'd been a moderator before for that video game company. I'd seen some of the worst toxicity on the internet, and this community on Twitch, it just reminded me of what the internet used to be like when it was new and everyone was happy and joyous, and it's like, wow, this is so cool. And so I was like, great community, these DJs are great. I'm a moderator for Freddie as well, because I was like, hey man, do you want any help? Because I'm watching you every time anyway. That like worked. And so, through him and through Lazy, and just slowly over time engaging with people, you go through that stage where you find your people, right?
Yeah, we talk a lot about it's finding your tribe, isn't it? And finding the people who are into what you're into, and like-minded people, like-minded music. And it's once you find that, you're like, wow, where's this been? Where's this been all my life?
Yeah. That's what led me to 45 Day, because watching Freddie play 45s and then seeing you jump in and say hi, and it's like, oh, okay, there's a 45 scene. I didn't know anything about this, because the majority of my DJ life I've been just playing 12s and albums, and 45s were a little bit of a nuisance for me. I was just like, it's only half a record and I don't even get the full remix on it, And now I'm just like, my whole thinking about it has been switched 360.
You're falling down the rabbit. I think once you get it, and once you like, okay, this is what I can do with 45s. Going even further, obviously, literally in the last couple of weeks, you've got a specific turntable has been released just for 45s. It just shows how far the culture has gone, that you've got a company like Reloop making a deck specifically for 45s. I mean, it's just incredible where it's going.
It makes kind of sense because the platters on that RP7 are about the same size as what are on a lot of controllers, like the higher end of controllers. It's the same kind of like thing. So they might be hoping people that already are using those might want to try out hopping over to that. But yeah, I bet you're excited to get your pair too.
Yeah, I mean, fingers crossed they'll be here next week. They've apparently sold out the first production of them, which I don't think they were expecting. So there's going to be probably a second production. It's really going to be interesting to see how it goes, and it definitely starts because we're in it and we live and breathe it. And obviously, I've been living and breathing 45s for whatever, about 7, 8, 9, 10 years ago. 45 days been going 6.5 years or whatever. And you think that's everyone's into it, but it's such a niche of a niche of a niche. It's a niche of record collectors. It's a niche of DJs.
Yeah.
But the people that we're meeting on a daily basis are incredible. And it's great to see people like you who've had this extensive DJ career behind them thinking, actually, this format's really cool. And what can I do with it? What can I be creative with it? That's, I think, the main thing that probably drags you in. You're like, right, what can I actually do with this format?
I love the challenge. That's what's really engaged me. The challenge, the physical challenge of playing it, the challenge of finding records, digging and ordering. I'm really lucky because my friend Kyan that I mentioned before runs a record store. So he's sourcing a lot of new stuff for me. And I found a great spot here, which is bringing in a lot of Japanese imports and selling them at really good prices. So I'm just like riding the waves. I'm scooping them up as quick as I can.
The digging scene, from what I can gather, speaking to other Australian DJs, is not quite the same as it is here in the UK, where you can go to charity shops and you've got record shops pretty much in every town and city now, which is, it's gone the other way. There used to be record shops everywhere, then there wasn't, and then now gradually these record shops are opening up. But Australia's not quite, it's not quite like that, is it?
Well, it's actually better than it was because there are a number of record stores that have cottoned on to how cheap it is to fly to Japan. The yen is weak. They go over there and they just scour the secondhand bins and come back and then mark them up over here. But the place I'm getting them from, they're not marking them up that much, man. And I'm getting like bangers for like $5, $10. I'm just like, bring it on.
Amazing.
Yeah.
They grab all of those while they don't realize.
I know. You know that thing when you're a record store and you find something and you realize it's worth a lot to you or whatever, for a second it takes your breath away. You're just like, and you kind of like look left to right, like, did anyone see that? I've got this. I never get that from buying digital music at all. I use digital, I play DVS as well, and I'm not knocking it, but I never get that feeling of when I find something physically and I've got it in my hands. It's like, that feeling. If I lost my digital collection, I'd be gutted. But if I lost my vinyl collection, you might as well just stab me in the heart. Like, honestly.
Especially you having had to sell a lot of records 2-3 times over. It's having that physical object in your hand, isn't it? It's so different to an MP3 or a hard drive or a USB stick or anything else, isn't it? It's just so different.
Yeah, exactly. And it's just nice that you can listen to your music without having to listen to advertising, without having to pay for a subscription or any of that. Just, the simple, original way of pulling it out the sleeve, putting it on the platter and hitting a button. I never tire of it.
So tell us a little bit more about Twitch, and then we'll move on to the sort of the last bit of the show, which is the 3 records that you've picked out.
Right.
So obviously you found it through Lazy Soul, you found Freddie J, then you sort of met me, and then we sort of, you've been on Coffee and Donuts. How are you finding DJing on Twitch? Are you finding it's different how you would if you're out in the club? Is it giving you more freedom, creativity?
100% different. It probably relates more to being on radio than it does from what I've done, like, out and about. I find it harder DJing on Twitch than I do to a room full of people. And I'll tell you why. It's because this is the way my brain works. It goes, I'm going to give you 80% to DJ with, and I'll leave you with 20% for talking and texting. So that equates to me finding it harder to conversate and DJ at the level I want to at the same time, and text and social media at the same time. So that's something I've got to learn. Also, I have a bit of a a mumbly voice. I'm doing my best to get around that, but that's another thing. I've got to like find my voice, so to speak. I think Josie's got a great voice.
Yeah, when
her
she's not
Twitch voice
swearing. But
is brilliant. Yeah, and I'm just like,
it
damn, I wish I
takes
could sound like
time
that.
though. It takes time. Like you say, you've only really been in the Twitch environment from a DJ point of view for like a year. We've
Yeah.
been doing it since the pandemic. It's 5 years plus, and it takes time. And you'll notice, and obviously your setup changes over time because you're like, oh, I'll move this here, I'll move that there, put that camera there, put these lights here.
Mm.
And it's the same with the level of talking. I mean, I probably talk too much, but there's other people who don't talk at all. There's other people who talk even more than me. There's people who just like text instead of actually getting on the mic. They'll just text, respond to whatever. It's so different now, isn't it? Because before you just turn up with your records, play your set or whatever. Now, like you're saying, and as Barcade's saying in the chat, it's on top of all of this, it's the social media, letting people know what's going on, trying to connect to people, making sure you're doing a story, making sure it's so much. It's so much rather than just literally playing records, isn't it?
The way I play, I'm constantly trying to do something or think about the next thing that's going to happen. I'm just like planning, and it's sort of constant. If you like mixing, or if you like blending, or you want to do like a little scratch transition or a few little samples here and there, and you want to do it at a like certain level, it's quite easy for me to just get absorbed into that and like miss a couple of like chat messages. But I've got the screen set up right in front of my decks, so I usually get to them pretty quickly. The other thing I've got is that I've got a really bad resting bitch face. Have you heard of that? When I've got my concentration face on when I'm DJing, I just look like a grumpy old man. I'm actually like really happy inside, but I just look like a grumpy old man.
There's a shot from Cut Class from the Reloop launch the other day that they posted, and it can probably be described as that.
The 1,000-yard stare. It's great.
As DJs, if you're out, people are looking at you. Here, obviously, you're just looking at the camera, but you know that people are watching what you're doing all the time. It's just concentration, isn't it, at the end of the day? Especially when you're doing routines and scratching and juggling and all that sort of stuff like that. It's a lot to take in. And on top of like reading the chat, keeping up with the chat, making sure you're giving people shout outs. But as Barcade says, and as you know from being a moderator yourself, you just need to get hopefully a couple of moderators in, or who can just sort of keep an eye on that. And if you do miss anything important, they can just sort of let you know. But it's it's part of being a team.
Cuzzo is my moderator. Thanks, Cuzzo. Josie as well has done a little bit for me, so it's great. I've got some really great.
You need them as cheerleaders as well. Sometimes,
it's
great to have them.
It's awesome. Like, it can be up and down as far as people watching, but it doesn't really bother me, because I just, in my mind, I kind of think someone's just a fly on the wall for me practicing right now. And at the end of the day, whether someone's watching or not, playing music or DJing is actually a positive thing. So if there's only like 3 people watching, it doesn't bother me. If there's like 15 people watching, I'm like, woohoo, this is awesome. But I don't get down on the numbers. I'm just practicing my art form. I'm trying to improve it.
We've got Double P's just popped in the chat as well, and he was the person who was the inspiration for the show in the first place. Back in March 21, he came on the show with John Musto. But again, we've had conversations on the show about numbers, and like on one sense, you can be like, oh, there's only 3 people watching, but you don't necessarily know who those 3 people are. That one person watching might be someone who messages you later and says, at the end of the set, they've not said anything, and then at the end of the set, they're like, oh, great set, it was really good, I've been lurking, working, and whatever. And you're like, yeah, there's always people in the background. And again, we've talked about it. We're quite lucky that we got the ability, if we want to go out to a gig, go out and see a DJ and whatever. A lot of people don't have. They might be housebound, they might have an illness, they might be stuck indoors or whatever. So we supply that as well, and it will just grow. Twitch is a lot busier now than it ever has been, certainly from when we started. So there's a lot more time, and obviously you've got new platforms opening up, for DJs, which we probably won't talk about on this show, but there's new platforms opening, and there's Mixcloud, and there's YouTube, and all these other. It's difficult to be on everything at the same time and to hit all these different communities and these different platforms, because they all require a slightly different view. But I think it's great just to concentrate on Twitch, and hopefully you'll get you involved in some more raid trains with Coffee and Donuts, and I know you've done some stuff with the Global Funk Fam as well. So that's the way to grow on Twitch. Just do raid trains and hopefully pick up new followers as you're going along.
Yeah, it's totally. I'm just, enjoying meeting like-minded people because I really miss hanging out with my DJ friends talking about music. Like, I love talking about music. Did you hear this? Yeah, this is great. Have you heard this? Wow, amazing. No, I've not heard that before. That's, originally how we spread the knowledge, and we all share and take things from each other and all grow together. It's awesome.
It's so important, and it's one of the reasons I do the events that I do with the 45s thing. It brings people together in real life. We stream, so we're doing what we're doing on Twitch. But like you say, we end up talking about records, about record decks, about record shops,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
then after all of that's finished, then we start talking about, the real life stuff and families and kids and relationships and all of that stuff. So it's great to be able to have this community. Let's move on to the last bit of the show. 345s that lift your spirits. I explained to you, I think earlier, that this came
Yep.
from Mark Lancaster on the very first show with Double P
Right.
and Mr. Musto. He said to us, what 45s lift your spirits? And then from then I've asked guests to choose 3. What 45s have you picked out for us?
First one is Pasadachi. Probably my first experience of hearing steel drums in a song. And I was like 12 years old when that came out. I love the video as well. They're just jamming on the Thames and then in the courtroom. And it's just, to me as a kid, and even still now, it's just got a really joyous sound. Anything with steel drums, I really love as well. It's just a sound of happiness to me. I don't know what it is. They just sound so happy. So that's one for sure. That was probably my earliest taste of reggae, I guess, when I was that age too. Pop reggae.
It's a great record, and it's one of those that you drop, and I suppose it's quite popular, so it can be a little bit cheesy, but people still love it, and people will always get down to it if you play it.
Yeah. I didn't say musical youth, by the way. So
what is number 2?
Number 2 is I Know De La Soul.
Yeah.
That for me represents the point where I started DJing. So 1990, when I first started at that place, Alfie's, with no DJ experience, that was on high rotation. All of the De La stuff, all the Tribe stuff, that made a big impression onto me. And that was that, and Run DMC were kind of like the gateway to hip hop for me. That's where it sort of really sort of started, and I went, oh, this is awesome. De La Soul, I know, is my second. My last one is another Japanese import. This is Empire Strikes Back soundtrack. I've only included this one. It starts off with Star Wars tune that you always hear at the start, which reminds me of the record that I told you about that I had when I was a kid. Those were the first notes that I heard, and they're etched into my mind. So that one for sure is a massive nostalgia hit.
Yeah, and obviously Star Wars, we're big fans here. Obviously we have 45 Day on the 4th of May, which is Star Wars Day as well. But yeah, no, it's amazing, and it's just such great music as well, and to be embedded in your musical psyche from such a young age, it has obviously taken you through to probably listening to samples and library music and things like soundtracks and things like that.
I'll show you something very quickly.
Go on then, let's do it. Very nice.
It's made by the guy that made the original helmets and
Wow.
A New Hope. And when you look at it, one of these, you realize that they're wonky as hell. They're not symmetrical at all. When you see that movie, if you watch Star Wars again, look at the Stormtrooper helmets from behind. They're lopsided.
Yeah. It's been great to catch a little bit of the story. As I said, we might get another part 2 in at some point. But in the meantime, are you back on Twitch anytime soon for people to catch you?
My regular streams, Thursday Freestyle with Global Funk Fam. I kicked that off. That is 7 o'clock local time. I think that's morning Europe.
10 a.m. UK time.
Yeah, and then I play Saturday night.
Saturday morning, probably here.
Saturday morning. Yeah, that's it. Yeah, for when I get to play with you again, and I'm looking at doing something on Raiders of the Lost Art as well.
Nice. So many great trains that are still going, and they've just celebrated their 3-year. We're celebrating 5 years of Coffee and Donuts in a couple of weeks, and it's been amazing to bring in new DJs to Twitch to be able to sort of join up in these raid trains.
I'm just loving everyone's individual style. Like, there are so many different 45 DJs out there, doing it in their own way. And that's something I really dig. You know, you've got guys that are selecting, you've got guys that are like cutting and scratching, you guys are blending, or just everyone's got their own kind of like shtick. I really enjoy
Yeah,
it.
I like that every channel is unique, and every channel, every DJ's got their own record collection, and everyone does their own style. Like you say, you've got selectors, you've got scratch DJs, we've got DMC champions on here. It's amazing that everyone's just sort of on a level platform and able to share. It's been great. We've rated Freddie, and it's been a lot of fun. So if you just hang on there, we'll say goodbye to everyone in the show. We've had lots of people joining in. We had Barcade in, Cut Class, Shoestring Sound, Double P. We had Larry Mustard in earlier. We had Rodrigo pop in as well. We had Snatch, DJ Candyman. Your partner as well was here earlier on. Thanks, everyone. Thanks for your time. We're going to end the stream now. We'll have a quick chat afterwards. And thanks a lot for being on the show.
Thank you for having me here, for sure.